Hey everybody, how's it going? It's RambleCast time. Today is March 15th, believe it or not. And sitting in with us today, we have Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
So you may have heard things all over the place are going all kinds of wonky and crazy. Everything from banks being shut down effectively, sold off and whatever else, to, oh my god, the same thing's happening in the carrier space. Weird how that seems to always happen. Uh, well,
Consolidation in my market?
never. That never happens. No one, no one could have possibly seen it coming that T-Mobile is buying Mint Mobile.
Yeah. So, Mint Mobile has been a really popular NVMO in VMO
MVNO.
MVNO for a really long time. It was kind of I don't know if it was the first, but it was the first in my perception of the carriers to go hard on the idea of buying many months of service at once and you get a bulk discount compared to just once a month.
Uh,
Um,
well, in what I would call the current generation of carriers, yeah. I think it's the first I can't say only one. I know there are more, but many years ago it did used to be actually a lot more of a thing to just
yeah,
buy like an amount of minutes basically, and it didn't really have an expiration date. So,
yeah,
technically this used to be actually kind of like standard operating procedure back in the day. But we're
yeah,
talking about back when like data wasn't a part of anything. No one even counted data as a consideration. So,
yeah. So it got really popular for that reason. It also became a little bit more popular after Ryan Reynolds became a part owner, I believe,
yeah, he wasn't full
in
owner.
2019. So pretty successful company, and now T-Mobile is buying it. They're buying the parent company, which owns Mint Mobile, Ultra Mobile, which is I've never heard of it, but apparently they specialize in phone plans for like international calling, and also a company called Plum, which is just like a business to business mobile network thing. So they're buying all that for up to $1.35 billion, depending on how that company's performance is by the time the deal closes, because it's part cash, part stocks. So um, it's a pretty big deal because like Mint Mobile is definitely one. And okay, so here's the thing: Mint, as far as I could tell, I tried looking around when I was writing my article about this. I don't know if they've ever said how many customers they have, at least in recent history. So I don't know. I can't like 100% say they're huge because I don't know, but my perception is that they're pretty popular. Um, and they've sort of consistently been in like all of the top rankings for like best budget carrier or whatever. So
Yeah, I would venture a
they're
guess that they're one of the more successful MVNOs at this stage.
yeah. So and I believe they were fully operating on T-Mobile's network. I don't know if they ever had service on anyone else. Like before, like a couple of years ago, Ting would have service on a couple different carriers you could choose, and then they are now owned by Dish, and they're pretty much just T-Mobile now. I think they're keeping like the whole Sims alive for a little longer. But
If I remember
yeah,
correctly, I think Ting was also the last one. I swear I remember there being an article somewhere about Ting was the last MVNO to actually technically carry multiple carriers.
Hmm.
And then when they stopped doing it, it's like, okay, evidently that's it.
Yeah. Austin said in the chat, hi Austin, Mint was one of the last remaining NVMOs T-Mobile was forced to honor their pre-Sprint contract agreement with. Yeah. I don't, there's some interesting business stuff with this, because the one of the Mint founders already said that on there was of course the Reddit thread on the Mint subreddit where everyone was freaking out, and he jumped in on there and said that they're not planning any price changes for their plans, but that literally always happens with this kind of stuff. Like that is 100% where they say don't freak out, nothing's changing.
Yeah.
And then
right before everything changes.
Yeah. So I having some trouble believing that. I think it's possible Mint might keep the same pricing for maybe another couple of years if this is purely just T-Mobile. They need the line to go up for investors, and they're running out of people who will willingly switch to T-Mobile. So now they need to buy other companies that pretend to be other companies.
Mm-hmm.
So, just like Verizon has like 5 sub carriers at this point, I've lost track. T-Mobile's kind of the same way, but they sold some of theirs to Dish. Now Dish has it might actually be 5 carriers they own, because they have Boost, they have Ting, they have, I don't know if Total Wireless is them or Verizon, I forget which, but like all of them have a bunch of sub brands already. So this is probably I'm sure this is mostly just a consumer acquisition. We need line to go up more.
It's a classic. We have money. We have to do something with it. Otherwise, it looks bad that we're not doing something with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really don't like this. Not just because I think T-Mobile is already big enough. Like they just finished fully swallowing up Sprint. So for that reason, also the fact that T-Mobile has been on a roll with just fucking over all of their subscribers, where it's weird fees that come out of nowhere, or getting hacked, which is like every 3 months now there's a T-Mobile hack. I would have liked to see them spend that $1.35 billion on security upgrades, maybe better network upgrades, but this is what they choose to spend their money on. So.
Don't worry, they'll make back that $1.5 billion in a quarter. It's okay. They'll have it to spend in a few months.
Yeah,
they won't, but they won't spend it at all. But hey, it's nice to pretend.
Yeah.
Also, just
not a fan.
Just to put it in context for how much money they have and how little of an acquisition this actually is for them, because they turn over quite a huge profit every quarter anyway.
Yeah, actually, I guess once this closes, maybe we'll know how many subscribers Mint has if T-Mobile.
Yeah, that's
has
actually
to report
true.
That on quarterly earnings. I don't know. They might just lump in all of their.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yeah,
they're probably gonna hide. Well, they don't have to. There's no real reason to hide it, but it will cease to matter shortly. But since they're acquiring at least 3 different sub carriers, they'll probably just lump in and say, "Oh yeah, we added this many people to our network last quarter." That's probably just how the conversation will go.
Or they'll have a table somewhere that's T-Mobile subscribers and then all of the brands.
Could be
kind of like how no one really knows how many of a certain device Apple sells unless it's iPhones or Macs, because they kind of just lump everything into one other category. So we kind of have to guess like how many how many Apple TVs are you selling? I don't know,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. So yeah, don't love that. Um, and yeah, I, I guess they don't really have any regulatory pushback because Mint is just another sub carrier that was already using their network.
Most likely.
Don't love it.
Yeah, we'll see. I could see there being some very narrow outside possibility that somebody might want to call foul on this, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah.
And honestly, Mint is too small. And I doubt anyone cares about the other brands, but Mint is too small for anyone to really throw a big red flag about this.
Yeah, because like there is a lot of competition with the NVMOs, so it's not enough because this keeps happening. But it's kind of the illusion of choice to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, unless you have any other thoughts on this.
Nope.
It seems like the obvious transition is actually into the Amazon thing. And then we can move on to all the AIs.
Okay. Yeah, so this is interesting. So over the past couple years, I don't know the exact time span off the top of my head, but Amazon has been dumping money into basically a competitor to Starlink from SpaceX. So Amazon has got government authorization and government authorization to set up a network of low orbit satellites around the Earth that will deliver fast internet to places that don't really have internet access. And Starlink has been pretty impressive. My perception of it as someone who's just been like sort of paying attention on and off is that it's still rough because there's a finite network capacity, and as it becomes more popular, then it gets worse for existing users until they add more capacity. So they've been going back and forth. I believe Starlink's going to launch some like upgraded satellites soon because it's tied into their partnership with T-Mobile to add satellite connectivity to regular smartphones. So that might change. But Amazon's building their own thing. Their network, I forget where they said how many. I believe it's like 3,000 satellites. Yeah. So Amazon's plan is to have 3,236 satellites in low Earth orbit.
A small number.
And to do that, they have secured up to 92 heavy lift launches from many different companies, none of which are SpaceX. Interesting. It's almost like Amazon doesn't want to give them money.
I mean, any association with Elon Musk right now is increasingly becoming a toxic situation.
That's true. But also I think it's just Jeff Bezos does he has his own rocket company.
Yeah.
That's getting the contracts for this. Some of the contracts. Amazon's not being picky. They just need this to go up very quickly, or I think they lose out on some subsidies. I'm not sure, but
probably.
So yeah, a lot of satellites, low Earth orbit. It's the same thing as Starlink, where like it's a bunch of like. They haven't shown what the satellites look like, but I'm assuming they're kind of the same thing as Starlink, where they're relatively small, and because they're in low Earth orbit, they'll just like slowly fall into the Earth's atmosphere, so they have to keep replenishing them. Um, so yeah, which is expensive, but also that's how you get internet that's better than the old type of satellite internet, where a company puts something into like the like really like stable orbit that's much farther from the Earth, and the speeds are shit. So that's how we get the faster speeds. Amazon hasn't showed off the satellites, but they did show off what the terminals look like, which are like the little rectangle antenna dish looking things that you actually need to receive the signal from the Earth.
Yeah, they actually, if they designed them just a little bit differently and a little higher, they would kind of make just great rain covers. I mean, really.
Yeah, I mean the small one looks like a little table for like your dolls. You know, if you don't, if your kids are playing with those.
Okay.
And I don't know. There's a small one which is where did they put the size for that? CNBC kind of wrote this article weird.
Looks like
yeah, that's the ultra compact one, which is a square, 7 inches across, weighs 1 pound, and supposedly will get speeds of up to 100 megabits per second. So that's the one I think they're kind of positioning for like people with like their RVs maybe, or just have one as like an emergency thing. I don't know if this is made for like you're putting this on top of your house necessarily.
I'm assuming that this is the kind of thing that they would, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out there, but it would be the sort of thing that would be very popular in like Ukraine, where they don't necessarily need tons of data, but not that this is any slouch on the data, but you know, you want something you can literally just pick up and go. It's a true grab and go kind of thing, and that's it. Something that's closer to, you know, their quote unquote standard, which is 11 inches. That's, you know, on the slightly beefier side. And then there's the Pro model, which is 19 by 30.
Yeah, Amazon. Yeah, so the standard one I think is the one that's more targeted for like you're putting this on top of your house.
Yeah, on top of the house, or I could even see that being on top of an RV.
Yeah, you gotta be careful going under the bridges.
Well, you take these down while you're moving.
Yeah. And then the Pro one, they specifically mention is for like oil rigs or large ships. Like this is not a thing that you as an individual buy. This is like the enterprise level stuff, where you need a lot of people using satellite internet. And they're, you know, they're not saying how much any of these terminals will be. They're not saying how much the monthly cost will be. All they've said really is that let me see, the one number that they gave, at least according to CNBC, was that the standard terminal, which is the middle one, is expected to cost less than $400 to produce. So who knows what the final price on that will be, how much of a markup Jeff wants, but
whether or not it will get a discount for Prime Day. There's nothing weird about this, but I find it somewhat amusing that in this picture of the Pro, if you look closely, you can see the Amazon logo on the corner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like there's anything weird about that. I would have expected it. But at the same time, some part of me just feels like they didn't need to put the logo on their like first photo of this device. They didn't need to make sure the logo was there, but they definitely made sure the logo was there.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. I don't like, this is kind of cool. I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on this because I first of all, I don't like Amazon, so I'm already like, okay.
Yeah.
But I also like, well, I don't know. I like what SpaceX is doing most of the time. I don't like who owns it. But with Amazon, I don't like a lot of what they're doing, and I don't like who owns it. So I'm really torn here. Um, but I obviously the idea of having pretty decent internet from any location on Earth is pretty cool if the price is acceptable. Obviously, it's Starlink is really helpful in like Ukraine right now. Um, I'm a little oh like a weird like cough burp thing there. Um, I am a little bit. I don't know. The part of me that I don't like about this is like number one, it needs a lot of constant rocket launches, which is still
Mhm.
like not the most environmentally conscious thing in the world to do right now. Maybe at some point we'll get like a giant slingshot for these kinds of things.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. The other thing is like, especially with Starlink, uh, so often it feels like it's advertised as a solution to uh, like the fact that there's no ISP competition in the US. So it's kind of like, okay, because we can't do something as simple as putting wires in the ground, or more than one company doing wires in the ground, we need to build an entire constellation of satellites and continuously replenish it. But that's more just like my complaint with it in the US, where I feel like there's a easier and better solution to this, but we're going to do this instead because this indirectly gives the military industrial complex more money. But
I suppose. I mean, okay, I don't disagree with you on that. Um, I guess I was thinking along the lines of, oh, I don't even know how to say it. It just, to me, this feels like kind of one of those weird promises that doesn't actually deliver very well, because pretty much any numbers that they give are always grossly inflated. They
Yeah.
never perform anywhere close to as well as what they're kind of promising. And as the popularity goes up, so does the performance go down. So invariably, like, they might be able to deliver, let's say that it's close to what they're promising. Right now, that's what they can get. In, say, a year, after some percentage of people in that area have purchased it and are using it, that performance just plummets. I've heard this many times with even Starlink, which it's not that popular. It's not like everyone's running around with Starlink yet. Apparently, there are some places that do get a little bit of like oversaturation.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I'm sure stuff like this is gonna be really important. Number one, just because everything is online now, so just automatically this could be life changing for a lot of people. If you're like in a really remote area and there's like no chance in hell you will ever get a normal ISP, like this is cool. But it also does kind of get into the, like, and like obviously this is really dark, but stuff like this I think is going to be really important over the next couple decades when like the US has terrible natural disasters every year, like we've been having. And you know what tends to break down when you have constant hurricanes and floods and everything is infrastructure. So
Yeah.
you know,
See,
satellite doesn't care if there's a hurricane
see,
after it passes.
you're calling out the natural disaster aspect of this. I would even just say crumbling infrastructure by itself is a
Yes,
reason
there's
to
also
expect
just
problems.
normal deterioration of our country.
Yeah. Like there is a certain point where if a bridge is left unmaintained, it collapses, and hey, look, all the things that were strung across that bridge, uh, they're gone. Like that just happens. So
this is like a piece of the internet puzzle that definitely should exist. I get a little iffy about it when it's being marketed, especially by like local governments in areas where like there can be normal internet. That's what I get kind of annoyed by, and also just Amazon. I get annoyed by Amazon. So, but yeah, that's kind of cool and interesting. We'll see how that goes. I've never tried any Starlink stuff, or anything like that. No experience so far with all the cool satellite stuff happening.
Well, to be fair, we don't make enough money to be trying Starlink by ourselves, and
That's true.
We're not among the YouTube influencer types that would have a reason for them to send us free Starlink. So
yes,
yeah,
I'm not RVing across the country.
Exactly.
I can barely afford my normal car. So that's kind of cool. And also, like, all this is really far off. Amazon isn't even going to launch their test satellites until I think it was May. And then I think they were targeting like late 2024 for the actual service, because they can't start the service until they get a decent amount of satellites in orbit. So so that'll happen eventually.
Yeah.
And things that are happening now, though, GPT-4, perhaps.
Had a feeling that's what you were going to go to.
Yeah.
Yes. ChatGPT is now in its 4th iteration, officially.
Yeah. So a lot of the AI chatbot stuff is currently powered by OpenAI, which developed the GPT-4 large language model. I believe that's what the acronym stands for. And that's what's been powering like ChatGPT and Bing Chat and a lot of the other stuff that's cropping up. And they've been working on an upgraded version for a while, and now it is out. It is called GPT-4, and Microsoft confirmed that Bing Chat has been using GPT-4 this entire time, which is interesting, because they said that before that they weren't using. They were using like I forget exactly what they said, but it was sort of implied that GPT-4 would be better than what Bing could do, because Bing screws up a lot. And now it's like, oh no, it's just that.
Yeah.
it's just that. It's just GPT-4 with web searching. So so the new version, it's supposed to be more accurate. They've done some testing on it that shows it's more accurate across the board than GPT 3.5, which is what most stuff was running on before. They're not like really talking about, again, like how they train this stuff. I think it's still using a really old data set. There's some, besides just generally being a little bit more accurate, still not like accurate, but it's it's marginally better.
Wasn't Bing's thing that it could at least check the internet once you once it had a reason to, like, so it may have been trained on older information, but it was still able to integrate new information.
Yeah, like the core language model, I believe, is still using like a 2021 data set, I think. But Bing has the added ability to do web searches that Microsoft has built. The regular GPT-4, I believe, is still doesn't really do that. Um, I haven't looked at what. So this is live on the like paid tier of ChatGPT, so I haven't played with it yet. I don't think it like really cites sources still, which was my main problem with ChatGPT. Is people kept hyping it up as this incredible way of learning information, but it could just completely bullshit you, and you would have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
Uh, so don't like that. Again, it's still not like really super duper accurate. They really probably the main like functional upgrade here is that they've integrated visual inputs. So now you can give it an image and it will process it sort of in the same way that Google Lens already does, where it can like detect the objects and then do something based on that. So the example they were using, I think in a blog post somewhere, was giving a picture of the inside of a fridge and asking the AI to come up with things you can make with the items in the fridge. So
That's interesting.
yeah, that sounds like what like the promise for smart fridges has been for like a decade.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe the next Samsung smart fridge will have Chat GPT. We'll see. But
I feel inclined to really call out the issue. It's just with that specific idea for a feature, which does sound cool, but it does not take into account someone's skill level. I can totally picture it popping up with, oh, you can make this like crazy difficult French dish that requires like
it's like
days of preparation and special care on how you do every single step, and people are going to be like, oh, well, I have the ingredients, it should be easy, right? Just throw it all in a pot, and next thing,
or the AI's like, okay, well, if you put the eggs into a particle accelerator, you can get this.
Oh yeah, watch it pop up with like molecular gastronomy style. Oh, just pull out your liquid nitrogen and
turns out you can. You have eggs. You can make some iron if you want. So yeah, there's some stuff like that.
Okay, but this is also AI, so don't forget, one of the recipes will somehow be gold. You will literally be able to create gold according to ChatGPT.
Yeah, and so like I don't. Again, it's just sort of marginally better at everything. If it's been Bing all along, then I am very underwhelmed because Bing it's still not good. Like I was writing, I brought up the idea at work for me to write an article about like things you can do with Bing Chat, because it's the same sort of usability issue as like Google Assistant, where like you don't really like know what you can do with it really, because there's not good discovery of this sort of stuff like there is with a normal app you use on your phone or computer or whatever. So I was like going through the Bing Reddit to see what people were using. I was going through Twitter, and like when you put aside the like give me paragraphs of text that are dull and soulless, it's still rough. And I was constantly running into things with Bing where even when I was asking it the same thing over and over again, it was giving me different answers, and sometimes they were wrong. Part of that was less on the AI model and more just on like Bing web searching is not great, or it's not able to. I mean, like Google has this issue too where I was trying to get Bing to give me a comparison table of like different phones, and I was like, okay, give me a table comparing an iPhone, and I think I said like a Galaxy S23 and a couple other things. I was like, okay, list me, the CPU, memory, whatever. And like it was getting stuff wrong. It once it didn't find the right info for the iPhone, or it just gave me like a blank answer. And then for the Android phone, it was giving me the wrong chipset. And I looked at the source, because you can do that in Bing. That's good. I looked at the source, and it was citing a article that was like a rumor roundup before the phone was released. So it's like, it's just stuff like that where like this doesn't really work all that well, to the point where really the main use I have for this stuff right now is like it's pretty good at helping me clean up my JavaScript code. And also it's good at like data transformation stuff. Like I can give it a markdown table and I'll tell it to give me it in HTML, and it'll do that. But like there's already like some non-AI stuff that can do that sort of thing. So
I still find it very interesting that you have had such decent to good experiences with those things, where literally every single time I've tried to use it for anything code related, it has failed me. Like varying degrees of failure, but definitely it has never produced actual usable, correct, functional code. Even just like setting apart, like, could it be more efficient? Could it be done better? Like, not even that level of like difficulty. It just outright is not correct code. And that's so far my experience with it.
Yeah, so like it eventually gets to the point where you're like, I was like asking myself this while trying to write that article. I was like, can I actually like tell people to use this? Because it kind of gets in the zone where it's like, the same thing where like if someone's asking me like what kind of computer to buy, I'm not going to recommend them a computer that works like 40% of the time. I'm gonna feel wrong about that. So it's like, I don't know if you should use this or not. It's very good at generating bullshit though. So again, if your job is like just making walls of text that don't really have to mean anything, great. It's really rough at other stuff.
Yeah, which keeps coming back to the classic argument that I feel like I have made every single time, and it's the only thing I have personally seen that I think I would ever trust it for, which is to ask it for something that puts you on a path to something. So ask it for ideas, ask it for reasons why a thing is a certain way, or try to get it to give you those ideas. In a sense, if you figure out how to prompt the device, to prompt ChatGPT or Bing or whatever, figure out how to prompt that to then create a prompt for you, because that's the only reliably good use for it right now.
The places I've been impressed with the most so far is when people take OpenAI's API and build something better on top of it. So Bing is a much better product than ChatGPT in most areas, just because it tells you what a source is. Like that alone, it's a lot more useful. I can check what it gives me, and also can do like, again, I am impressed sometimes by its ability to do like multi-step web searches. Like if that worked more reliably, that'd be sick. I'd use that a lot, but I still have to check it. In the same way that I usually have to go through multiple results on a Google search before I find something useful. So, maybe this will be really cool when, again, like a lot of there's a lot of people already using OpenAI's API, but right now they're all just sort of front ends for ChatGPT. Like Discord announced a bot with that. It's just ChatGPT, but it's in Discord. That's really it. That's all it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there might be some cool stuff when this is combined with like either a much better interface or a very specialized data set. Like Duolingo just announced a thing where they're like trying to build this so it's like a like personal, like someone who's like a bot that's like helping you express things in a different language. um I don't know if that's necessarily good, but like that's a better use case probably than this. I don't know. I also saw people were roasting the New York Times because they wrote a thing where they were like asking Chat GPT to like pronounce words in Spanish, because that was supposedly one of the upgrades here, is that it's better at like processing stuff like that, and like supposedly every pronunciation was wrong. um, so uh, yeah, so I don't know. There might be cool. I don't really have a whole lot of interest in like stock Chat GPT or stock OpenAI, so to speak, but maybe it can be cool stuff. I mean, honestly, just the like the visual input stuff is really interesting, because this is potentially like an API to make your own Google Lens or put Google Lens in everything, which is really cool. Like,
Could be.
I think we already talked about this, but like imagine a Mastodon app that can write alternate text for any image in the app, whether or not the person who posted it wrote an alternate text or not.
Yeah.
Um, so there's stuff like that that could be cool. I don't have a lot of interest in um, the main like most of the main selling points, because they're not good.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. Um,
So, really
yeah.
quick, hello. Well, Austin, we've already kind of talked with you, but hello to Austin, Curvy, and David. Curvy also brought up that Bing is getting a ton of traffic thanks to its
Yeah.
I guess I'll call it a bot. And yeah, that's something I brought up, or we talked about in Discord. It was a few weeks ago. And yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense that Microsoft wants to go
it's
all
shiny
in
new
on
thing.
this. They made Bing relevant. Finally. I mean, it's taken over a decade, and Bing is finally relevant. And honestly, I think the question is, how long is it going to last? If I were Microsoft, I would be basically writing this as long and as hard as possible, because frankly, it's the only way they're going to keep being relevant right now. But they might be able to, well, Bing and Edge. It's the way that they're going to be able to get new users onto these products that frankly were just doing very mediocre at, owning a very small sliver of a market. So
Yeah, and
I think
and fundamentally,
this makes their products, not, I don't want to say successful, but this is what keeps their products in contention and gives them a multiple, like, year over year. They're going to gain more users because of what they're doing right now than they probably would have if they just stayed the course for the next 10 years.
yeah, because like it is like right now, it's a shiny toy.
Yeah.
It's not really it like they're getting a lot of users because there's people like me who are like, okay, can I like use this for anything? Like I'm just gonna play around with it for a little bit. Right now it's mostly a toy. Or if you're someone on LinkedIn, it's how you now write all of your posts, if you weren't already.
Hey, yeah.
So yeah, so it's interesting to be sure. I saw all of the Bing stuff just rolled out to the stable version of Microsoft Edge 2 or 3 days ago. So now Edge has a giant Bing button on the toolbar, and it's hilarious because it is huge. You can't turn it off. there is a there is like a flag, not even in like normal Chrome or Edge flags, but like something mostly intended for like IT departments to toggle. And also, so basically, if you haven't seen how it works in Edge, is you click the button and it opens a sidebar that already existed. There was already a sidebar, but it opens with like the Bing tab open. So now you click the button, it opens the whole sidebar with Bing activated, but it also opens if you even like hover your mouse over the button for a second. Like they're so that it's very clear like there is a marketing person at Microsoft who is like, this needs to be in all the things and it needs to like be invasive. Like you can't even give people a choice if they want to use it or not.
This is the Google Plus situation.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And it's hilarious because like obviously you know, because I've been trying to write about the Bing stuff for work. It's the first time I've used Edge for something besides making sure my browser extensions work in Edge. So in a way, like I guess I'm now an active user when I wasn't before, but on the other hand, Joe was in the How to Geek Slack complaining about it because he was using Edge normally, and now it's there's this big annoying button you can't turn off that opens an entire panel if you so much drag your mouse over there. So it's great. This is it is very like Google Plus vibes, or just like I mean, this happens all the time. Like every time Facebook introduces a new thing, and they try to cram it in as hard as they can in the Facebook app or the Instagram app. Yeah. So anyway, that's fun.
Yeah, and speaking of forcing AI into everything, Google.
Google. Yeah, Google's doing it too, because they need to let investors know that they are doing something.
Yeah, that's exactly
it. User annoyances or consequences from building entire new facilities with GPUs running all the time, be damned. They're going to get this feature in. So Google showed up again. This is very funny to me because Microsoft's initial announcement for the Bing stuff, I think, was a day or two off of Google doing the same thing. I don't know if I forget. I think Microsoft came first, and then Google did a blog post the next day explaining how they were getting AI stuff in a Google search. I don't remember exactly, but it's the same thing here, where Google published this post 2 days ahead of a Microsoft AI event, where they're probably going to talk about like, you know, adding AI stuff. And I think it was specifically Microsoft 365. So I'm sure there's going to be stuff in like Word and PowerPoint and stuff soon. So this is 2 days before Microsoft's event. They published this. And what I find interesting is that this is published on the Workspace blog, where they normally talk about just like stuff they're kind of like uses for things that already, this is like their like marketing side. They have a different blog called Workspace Updates, which is where they usually announce new features, and they announce them when they're like rolling out.
Yeah.
Because it's intended for like IT departments to look at, so they know like what to do or how to explain something to people when they come to them with their laptop and they're like, what's this scary new button in Google Docs?
And it's notable that particular blog is way less pretty.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's not ugly or anything, but it is not, it doesn't have Google's like, if I remember, I think even the font is different. Like it's just not
it's
as
just
pretty.
A blogger blog.
Yeah. It's very generic looking.
Yeah. But what I find interesting is that the ugly blog is where they announce things that are like fully done and ready to go, like they're rolling it out now. This is on like a marketing thing, and nowhere in this do they say exactly when it's coming out. So this to me really reads like they're trying to do a preemptive strike on whatever Microsoft is going to talk about. For all I know, this could be weeks or months from showing up. I don't know. But like they sure didn't say when they're going to be done with it, which almost never happens with Google Docs stuff. Like again, like usually they announce things like when it starts rolling out, and then like 15 days later, everyone has it. So that's very interesting to me. But on to what it is actually about. They mostly there's a couple things coming to. They talked about Gmail and Google Docs here. The main thing in Google Docs, which is also in Gmail but mostly useful for Google Docs, is generative text. So basically the same thing where you ask ChatGPT to write some bullshit and it spits out a couple paragraphs that is now in Google Docs. There's like a button you click and then you type in a prompt and it will try to generate something. And there's a button to like retry it. And then if it looks okay, you can click a button and it'll paste it into your document. So that's a thing. I don't know, I don't like super love this, but I'll see how aggressive they're being about it. I'll put it that way. We'll see if they're gonna pull a Microsoft and if there's just gonna be like a giant AI button you can't get rid of somewhere that will do this. And like they mention, and so there's the ability to just generate text out of nothing. There's also a couple different modes they're working on for transforming text. So their example is like you write down a couple bullet points from a meeting and you click a button and it will turn them into properly formatted notes. I did see a good take on Mastodon about this, which is where they're talking about this also in the context of like writing an email. And someone was like, if your email can be a couple bullet points, just keep it a couple bullet points.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm not ever going to use this.
Well, what I kind of immediately, the first thing I thought is, okay, so it's doing the exact opposite of what Bing's thing did, where where you give it a big document and say, summarize this for me. And it's like, okay, sure. And it spits out a few bullet points. Like, cool. Now, if you need to reinflate it, go to Google.
Yeah, and there is a few other modes in this Gmail GIF they have where there's like also a shortened thing, which I guess is maybe close to Bing's summary thing, but sort of intended as like you're editing your document. And yeah, so it's the same thing we're seeing everywhere else, but at least this isn't a chatbot. They're not just putting a chatbot in Google Docs and calling it a day. But like, I still don't super love this. Again, like I'm really the only example they write in this that I don't find like just really bad is that example of like you're turning notes into like a documentation almost. Like, I guess that's cool, but it's again, like I feel the same way I feel about generating text with like ChatGPT, where it just makes them like most generic sounding fluff that then I have to try to parse through. So yeah.
Yeah,
and,
this is kind of a waste in a way, because it does incentivize people to write something short and then make it turn the short thing into a long thing that then other people are expected to read. Obviously, yeah, the benefit is if you can already have the short thing, just please leave it the short thing.
Yeah, you don't need to make it longer. Just have it's okay to just have notes. You can just write some nice bullet points.
Actually, if anything, what I want it to do, okay, there is one thing I do want.
Okay.
I want I want something that's generative that can take somebody's terrible grammar, terrible spelling, and more importantly, but it kind of goes along with these, they're sort of bad phrasing. And I want it to be able to take that and correct it, turn it into something that's good. I can't count how many times, like, even in social media posts, I've seen people post stuff where they leave out some words, they say things in really odd phrases, and it just becomes really difficult to understand it. You can't follow what they're saying without like mentally reading and retranslating it into something usable. I want generative AI to solve that.
Okay, so like sort of a reader view, reader
Yeah.
mode kind of deal, where you're taking the text and making it more parsable.
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
see, you know,
And
make that with the ability to like convert all the weird like words that like the UK and India has for things we have and turn it into the right version.
But okay, and
Like,
I don't deny that this will make pieces of text longer, but it's going to make it longer by like a few words. It's going to fit in just a few more words. It's not like all of these other examples like Google's giving where it's going to take, 12 words and turn it into 70. I don't want something that's going to suddenly just spit out tons of extra stuff. It should just add a few words. Hey Nils, how's it going, man?
yeah. Hello. Yeah, so and so yeah, I don't like super duper love this stuff. Again, like I think transformative stuff like that maybe. They do say at the top of the post like more longer term stuff that they're working on. They say they're working on draft, reply, summarize, and prioritize your Gmail. I really don't want to know what that entails because Gmail's spam filtering is horrendous. So I don't know if an AI managing that is going to be better or worse.
Yeah, because
they say
right now I just have to agree on the basis that well, not half, but I'd say about 1 out of every 10 spam messages is actually something legitimate. And for every legitimate email that ends up in spam, I probably have at least one spam not getting caught in the filter. So yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, and they mention this stuff with Google Docs. They say bring your creative vision to life with auto-generated images, audio, and video in slides, which kind of sounds like that like template making thing Microsoft was working on. I forgot what it's called, but it's the thing that like had like DALL-E integration in it where it would just sort of like if you didn't have an image for a background it would make one. They say go from raw data to insights and analysis via auto completion, formula generation, and contextual categorization in sheets. I think there's some opportunity for this in sheets. I can see that because that is something where people make really complex scripting. And also a lot of the stuff you're doing in a spreadsheet is just like transforming different data sets, and that's something that this is very good at. So maybe something useful there. We'll see.
Well, it's hard not to immediately think about that. The guy that made the extension or something. I think it was an extension, but it could have been. Oh no! It was a for apps thing. Well, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, it was he was demonstrating that he was using ChatGPT as a back end where he could just type a query into a cell, and it would hit that and just turn it into the formula to get that kind of information back out.
Yeah.
And it was like, that was a really, really clever use. Now, whether or not it's actually correct, that's debatable. But
yeah, I mean, yeah, like Excel and Sheets is very much that thing where like you're like, as someone who uses Excel a couple of times a year, if I need to do something, I'm always like, I need to Google what the formula for a certain thing is, or the function, I should say. So like, if it can do that, that might be neat. I don't know. Again, depends on how reliable this all is. And they also mentioned generate new backgrounds and capture notes in Meet, and enable workflows for getting things done in chat. Those are both pretty vague. I know one thing that Slack has now, which isn't like technically Slack, but they wrote a blog post about it, I believe. One company made a wrapper for ChatGPT in Slack. I think it was Salesforce, and they were advertising it as a way to like summarize like a conversation you had with a person, or summarize a conversation that happened like while you're away or something. And Discord is also testing that with their bot thing, and that stuff I'm really not sure about, because like I don't really like, if someone's summarizing a conversation that I was taking part in and it misinterprets what I say, and then someone gets the idea that I said a different thing. It's I don't know. I don't super love that.
okay, I get what you're saying. The vague counterpoint is, I think if somebody wants to respond to that, and this only makes sense if they're trying to respond to that, then they're probably going to go looking for the part where they can discern that you said a particular thing. That way they can reply to it directly. The problem is if there's like a long conversation and they decide, oh, I just don't want to wade into the middle of this, but then it interprets that maybe you said something like, or it thinks you said something like, Hitler's a good guy. Obviously, this is not what you would have said, but it might read into it the wrong way. And so if someone just wants the summary and they're not going to reply to anything, but they just want to hear, and then this tells them that, oh yeah, Corbin Davenport is kind of a fan of Hitler, then that becomes the problem.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, like, I think a lot of like the potential useful AI stuff, especially in Meet, like doesn't need any of this. Like Google's already doing a lot of this. Like I think Meet already has like auto-generated subtitles for meetings. If not, I believe Microsoft Teams does. Which also, I forget which one, but one or both of them also can generate can take those automatically generated subtitles and make like meeting notes from it, like just a log of what has been said, which is really cool. So like that kind of stuff apparently doesn't need any of this, and that seems more useful than what they're talking about here. So I don't know. Again, like this is kind of, we're firmly in the early NFT phase where every company needs to be seen doing something with this, whether or not it's useful.
Okay, well, I have to resurrect the Google Plus reference right away. I'm looking at some of these things, and I mean, the Google Sheets thing makes sense. That's legitimately cool. or can be legitimately cool. We've seen this demonstrated already by a random person. Let's see, some of the stuff with Gmail, I'm sure for some people it will make sense. I don't really, Nils, I don't quite agree with your interpretation on bullet points, but there are people who are going to use this. There are some people who will think that this isn't a good solution. Either way, there will simply be people that use it, and possibly they are very terrible at writing, and for them this will be great.
I could, if I'm being really charitable, I could see a use in the Gmail thing for people who sort of demand they be communicated with in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't want to spend 20 minutes writing an email about something that can be a couple bullet points, I will write the bullet points and let Gmail turn it into the format that the other person deems acceptable. Thankfully, I don't really have to deal with any of those people, but if I do at some point in the future, I'll keep it in mind.
That'd be interesting. Yeah. Okay, so, but as I look over this list, stuff like, quote, enabling workflows for getting things done in chat, or generate
that's a bunch of words.
Right, or generate new backgrounds and capture notes in Meet. Okay, capture notes fine, but the generate new background, what? See, it's stuff like this that I think, this is why I think back to Google Plus, because there were, obviously everyone's heard this story. Google Plus, when it was in its, we'll say, prime, Google was forcing this down the throat of every division. Every product in the company was, it's not fair to say it was required. In some cases it was, but oftentimes it was more just strongly incentivized. Everyone was expected to put Google Plus somehow into their product, with a few obvious exceptions. Like, nobody thought it should go into the calculator app, but it sure as hell got forced into almost everything else. And this is kind of what I think is happening here. You've got somebody who works on the Meet project, or product, either one. It's just weird to say Meet product. Anyway, see, it's funny once it's said out loud. But you have somebody who was tasked with trying to come up with a way to do this. Like, hey, you find a thing that you can shove into your product that is AI and uses the stuff that we've developed. And someone who works on Meet is like, I don't know, it'll make up backgrounds. And someone else in the room is like, you know what? Yeah, sure, whatever. Just say it'll make up backgrounds. Cool. We don't need to worry about this anymore. And I honestly, I bet that's how that conversation went.
Yeah, totally.
But, half of these things might not even materialize, or if they do, they're just going to be edge features that someone clicks a checkbox, and it may or may not be active, and it will probably never be updated or improved. It'll come out, it'll exist, it'll live there for a year or two, and at some point someone will be like, oh, yeah, that's still here. We can delete that. And it'll just go away. One day the generate new backgrounds and Meet feature will just vanish, and nobody will care. Except Corbin, because he likes to use the background filters.
Yes. Well, I have backgrounds in Meet, but they're just normal images from all those websites that host Zoom backgrounds. I think I have the Bridge of the Enterprise on my How To Geek calls now. It's very fun, but that doesn't need a language learning model.
No, it doesn't.
So, yes, that's the thing that's happening. Was there any other AI stuff?
Well, It's funny you ask, because it turns out there is, in fact, a very AI-oriented thing that's happening, and Samsung is doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I just got done complaining. I get to do more complaining.
Well, your complaint and my complaint, I believe, are very different on this.
Okay.
But I'll just I'll take the chief summarizer in chief hat on this one. For those of you who somehow have missed this story, it has somebody on Reddit decided to do a little bit of tinkering and testing to see if they can't, I guess you could say, disprove Samsung's so-called space zoom feature. What they did, well, okay, first off, just a very basic explanation of the. Oh, Zach is on the line. I take it you wanna get your own licks in about this Samsung thing.
Get him out.
Okay.
Get out.
I'm taking over your podcast, Corbin.
Okay, well, I'm going to finish summarizing this and then we'll get into discussion. Anyway, so Samsung basically marketed this thing as a feature that can take pictures of things in space and get actually a fairly good high quality image. We'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of that shortly, but in essence, this has been around for, I believe, 3 years.
Yep. Since the S20.
What's that?
Since the S20.
Since the S20? Okay, so, well, 3.5, whatever.
Yeah, it was 2020.
Yeah. Anyway, so, somebody on Reddit decided to disprove this. Because apparently, while it has been kind of disproven several times, it's going to get disproven again. What this person did is take basically a picture of the moon. They scaled it way, way down to barely any usable pixels. I believe then re-enlarged it. Then proceeded to also blow out the highlights, ruin all the detail, basically just turn it into, not much better than a round blob on a computer screen. Yeah. And then they took a picture, and lo and behold, their phone decided, oh yeah, no, we can actually get something really good out of this. And it added a bunch of detail that clearly could not have existed. It was an impossible amount of detail.
Yeah, the first test they did, they scaled down the image and then they did a blur on it to the point where there was almost no detail, and then they took a picture with lights off, zoom into a monitor, try to make it think it's the sky.
So yeah, this person has done a few different versions of the test, and this actually resulted in, I believe, 2 other Reddit posts, or at least 1 other Reddit post. Anyway, so the smartphone tech sphere has pretty much blown up with this, as people have argued that this is either okay or it's terrible. Some people have argued about what it's actually doing. Basically, everyone's mad at somebody. Some people are mad at Samsung. Some people are mad at this Redditor, or just
mad at Cody.
Society in general for getting angry. What'd you say, Zach?
I'm mad at you.
Good.
Not because of this, just
people are mad at the moon for existing. How dare there be a moon?
I mean, there are people who are actually mad at the moon. That is a thing. Yeah. I'm not sure if you've heard of them.
Moons aren't real.
How dare they make tides on our planet? Who do they think they are?
Anyway, so and I suppose it needs to be mentioned, Samsung has kind of addressed this in the past. Not very well, not very extensively, but Samsung has sort of admitted that they're using AI in some somewhat creative ways to sort of fill in some blanks. They're not really saying it that way. They're really, really doing everything they can to be evasive. But they do admit that they trained their AI model on pictures of the moon to give it a helping hand if it recognizes what it thinks is the moon. So yeah, that is,
they're like advertising all over their commercials that they do this, but I wouldn't say that they're hiding it, because it is like they wrote an explainer about it, even if it was only in Korean. It's super easy to search this stuff in Google Translate it. It's not like they were pulling an Oppo and saying, look at this amazing photo our camera can take, and it's something from a DSLR from Shutterstock. Like, it's not.
Yeah. Well,
it's not like it's completely fake.
The controversy was that, and the Reddit post was like, Samsung is faking the photos, because the controversy was like, I guess if it's upscaling the actual photo you took, it's fine, but if it inserts a image of the moon into your image, then it's fake. That was the controversy in a nutshell, which is extremely stupid. But
I'll start by addressing that, because I do agree that controversy to an extent is stupid. And it's stupid because I think very few people are specifically saying, I need my smartphone photos to be ridiculously perfect and ridiculously real. Most of the people who are shooting photos are probably okay with the idea of having something replaced in here. And if they're not, either they're probably not going to use a smartphone, or they're, or it's a very narrow group of people who are going to be genuinely angry about having a phone modifying the photo for them. I mean, these are the same people who presumably would like take a portrait mode photo and then go, oh my god, why is there fake background blur?
The blur is faked.
Yeah. I mean, of course it's fake. You know it's fake. That's the point of it. Where I do think a lot of people are justified in being a little angry about this is that it's happening without them knowing. That is a bit of a squirrely issue in my opinion. Samsung could have, honestly, Samsung could have put this feature out there and just told people outright, hey, we enhance certain stuff, and we're doing it by just replacing it or using image manipulation to just sort of insert detail that wasn't there before. If they just came right out and said this in their feature description, I think most people would look at this and go, oh yeah, no, yeah, turn that on, that's awesome. But because
it's similar to them with the whole game optimization thing, fine, sure, just tell people. They just seem to be really bad at telling people things that are perfectly fine, but people don't like not being told about it. But I feel like it's still a little different, because you're not going to notice your phone being throttled if you're scrolling through Chrome and you're a normal person who doesn't have 500 tabs open. But it is very hard not to notice the phone enhancing the moon. It takes up to 10 seconds for it to actually process the photo. You'll see in the viewfinder, the most it does is darken the rest of the sky to get you a black background, which I personally don't like, but it's really obvious that it does it. But the moon's still going to be a little bit blurry, a little bit washed out. And then when you take the picture and go to your gallery, it takes 5 to 10 seconds of a spinning progress bar before the image turns into something else. You have to you have to almost look the other way to not see that it's doing something. It's not like Samsung is doing everything possible to hide this. Like, you can't see the photo until it's processed or whatever.
But to be fair, I think a lot of people, especially because this is literally something Samsung at one time said, and I don't know if they still say this, but there was a point in time where they were implying that this was doing the same thing that Google and actually even like some high-end DSLRs have a special version of this feature where it is basically a super resolution photo where it's taking several different frames, presumably all with just micro movement or the natural movement of the moon or whatever. And because of small minute changes in the scene that basically cross pixel boundaries, they can infer detail that you would never be able to get with the resolution that's normal. Yeah. That is a technique. It has been around for a few years. It's something Google does in the Pixel phones somewhere. I forget where.
They do it when you're zooming in. They take a bunch of shots. But are we sure Samsung isn't doing that?
Okay, so here's the thing. Samsung...
It's a 100-time crop, and they know where you're focusing because they lock onto the moon and crop stabilize the image.
Right. So they may be doing that, but the thing is, people were under the impression, because Samsung, let's be honest, Samsung wanted them to be under this impression. They wanted people to believe that what was happening was just that. They wanted people to think that it was just a whole lot of like super resolution style processing that was getting that detail. And again, the end result I don't think really matters here. And I don't even really care whether or not this is how they're getting there. I'll get to what I care about shortly. But I think that's where a lot of people probably are actually angry about this, because they felt led to believe that this is what Samsung was doing, when in truth Samsung was pulling from just an AI training model of the moon to inject detail into a photo that didn't otherwise have it at all. In other words, this is not stuff that was captured by the sensor or the sensor in your phone. It's stuff that was captured by some other sensor and inserted into your photo.
Yeah, I mean,
I have issues.
It's definitely influenced by, I have YouTube Premium, I have ad blockers everywhere, I have Hulu without ads and stuff, so I don't see commercials. So I haven't seen Samsung's like video commercials on this. I only see like the product pages, which just kind of don't really seem very specific. They're just like, ooh, you can zoom really far. They don't say like anything beyond the normal marketing upselling of camera descriptions.
So
like, if Samsung's doing stupid commercial stuff, they should probably not be. I know they've gotten in trouble before by implying that, I think it was the S8, because it was water resistant. They got in trouble in Australia for doing an ad with Auntie Donna using it on the beach, which implied that it would be safe in saltwater.
Yeah, I remember that.
When water resistance isn't. So it seems like whoever is managing their commercials really likes to lie.
Okay, so you brought this up when we talked about this yesterday, I think, that you basically block all ads. Just to be clear, one of the places that I saw this mentioned was when I was doing a quick look for articles just to have for links, which actually I'll paste those into chat in a moment. When I was looking for articles, one of them I came across specifically said that Samsung had explained to, I want to say it was like Engadget or Gizmodo or somebody. They actually claim in like for like on the record or for an article that they were just taking a bunch of different frames, and that they were effectively just using AI to figure out how best to bring out the detail in them, and and then they were presenting that as the image. So that explains the delay. That explains a lot of the things that are going on, at least as far as the user sees. But in truth, as we know, they are using, parts of actual moon images to generate the final result. Which, yeah, that's not the same thing. So yeah, there is no question that they are taking like multiple frames and using some enhancement tricks in order to get the best possible image of the moon. But at the same time, that image is then being replaced by something else. They're just getting the best possible starting point to use as a template when they replace it.
Yeah. So I can agree there's like really, probably some poor marketing here. I think that also just ties into the issue where PR people for tech companies usually are not good at explaining the really technical stuff, especially when they're trying, or they don't know it,
yeah,
or they're as I've experienced a couple times, relaying information from engineers who are maybe the PR person isn't summarizing them right, or the engineers themselves are not good at explaining things, because that's very common in technical fields, is you don't know how to express ideas very well.
And I'm going to add one more thing to what you're saying. Sometimes PR people also they might even understand a thing, but a lot of times they want to dumb it down for what they believe to be their audience. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to Google PR people who, after like kind of confirming that I actually know what I'm talking about, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we need to talk to you on a different level. At which point they then start giving answers that are useful and actually say the correct thing.
Customer service.
What's that?
I wish I could get that with customer service.
Yeah, customer service is always famous for having this problem too.
Yeah, so maybe there's marketing issues there. I'm not sure. I think that this might also just tie into the fact that Samsung really likes to give just phone cameras in general want to give the impression that they're comparable to a quote-unquote real camera. So maybe just the might lead people to think that there's not a lot helping the image. But I maintain the fact that this entire controversy is really dumb. It is so stupid. I was mad the entire time I was writing my article about this, because like every single photo taken with the smartphone is like AI'd already. Like everything, like all of, like we've talked about this years ago, when there was like discernible differences between like how Samsung phones treated colors and how OnePlus phones treated images. Like I complained over and over again about how every picture taken on a OnePlus phone looked like a watercolor photo because their processing was fucked. Like you can't, like, the entire game with smartphone photography has been, how do we use the best software we have to make this image look like it came out of a quote unquote normal camera. So it's dumb for that reason, and also just dumb for the reason that I read a little bit of The Verge's take on this, and their take was sort of like, this is another thing in this, you know, problem we're having right now, where it's sometimes difficult to tell like what's AI and what's real. I think that's a little bit silly, just because when it comes to camera stuff like this, the main thing I have an issue with, and I think most people have an issue with because the industry is moving away from this, is using AI to make photos look different than how they're supposed to look, making them less accurate. Like in the it really seemed like like early 2010s is this concept of like beauty mode, especially beauty mode as the default camera mode, where photos by default, when you take a picture of a human, they're removing acne, they're removing blemishes, freckles, whatever. That's not good, just because number one is distorting reality from how it's supposed to look, and number two because it's contributing to like really bad like mental health, like body image stuff. Seems like most companies have moved away from that now. Like there's even like the opposite. Okay, well, sometimes. And like some of them are going the other way now, where like recently Google has been really pumped up about the fact that it's using AI to try to get more realistic colors of like people with dark skin, because cameras have a lot of difficulty with that, especially if you have dark skinned people next to lighter skinned people. The camera really freaks out with like color balance and stuff. So it's kind of going the other direction. So I don't really have an issue with AI stuff like this, where it's trying to more closely match reality. So I don't really have a problem with this, because in this case, the alternative is you take a picture of the moon and it's a bright white dot. That is the only that's really the most you can get until we get like some incredible innovations in physics, where we can have like much better lenses or much bigger sensors in smartphones. Like that's the alternative, is you take a picture of the sky and it's just kind of like a really bright white dot somewhere, and that's it. So I don't really have an issue with this, especially because there's been a setting this whole time for you to turn this off. Again, like going back to what we were talking about with Microsoft Edge, where there's something that like really changes how you use something and there's not a setting for it. If they were doing this and there's no toggle anywhere, sure, I guess, I don't know. But I think this is
literally a button in the viewfinder.
It's a button. Now, granted, calling it scene optimizer doesn't really tell you anything. So yeah. I'll grant it's like maybe not as, but I do think it'd be yeah. But that's a UX issue. Yeah, I do think it'd be really funny if they like itemized out everything, like toggle moon on and off, like that.
Actually, I would really like that.
Yeah,
I would like to keep the moon detail, but turn off the make the sky black.
Can I turn off the make the grass neon, please? I'll take that switch. Yeah.
You do bring up actually kind of an extension of our earlier point, though. The fact that this is called Scene Optimizer and it's just a single toggle in the interface does kind of dispel the notion that this is just a marketing thing. It is, in fact, not just Samsung's marketing that is doing this thing. It is very much definitely a side effect of them wanting this result. Like Samsung, some product manager decided that this is something that they wanted. It wanted to kind of bury.
They came up with that screen.
And I think also the reason why maybe they're not really talking about this much anymore is because this was introduced with the S20 Ultra, and that was when they were like really starting to get good zoom features, and eventually the zoom became more impressive with like things on the ground, like you're taking a picture of a building that's really far away, and that's the more impressive demo than, oh, we made the moon look cool. Because making the moon look cool is much easier. The moon always looks the same.
Yeah. So and I want to make it very clear, I don't, and I kind of said this before.
Pro moon.
I don't care that they're doing this. I think it's perfectly fine that they're replacing the moon. Cheers. It's no different than any other camera filter feature. In that sense. Now here's where my problem actually lies in all of this. The fact that they hid this specific feature and they marketed it very clearly in connection with their zoom lens. They created a false equivalence of how good the zoom lens itself is. The reality is, they marketed, and you can see in, there's a video linked in, is it The Verge? Yeah. If you go to The Verge's post, and I'll paste the link into chat for this, there is I think it's like a 40-second video. You can see there's somebody who holds up the phone, takes a picture of the moon. It's like barely a few frames. This is super quick. Yeah, there's that. And it implies that the zoom lens is actually that good, which is dishonest. And here's the thing. Someone out there is very likely going to see this and go, oh my god, that is a really amazing zoom lens that it can get that kind of detail out of the moon. And as a result, they're probably then thinking, oh, I bet what I can do is then use that for anything. That's where my problem with this lies. Because this is false advertising for the zoom lens. I don't care that it's improving the moon. But they need to be telling people that they're you know, I don't want to use the word faking the moon, even though that is what it is. It's the fact that they are presenting the zoom lens in a light that is dishonest. That's the problem. And that is the part where I think they should be held accountable. But that's not the part anyone's making an issue out of.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't want to sound too jaded or whataboutism, but like, that's not out of the ordinary for marketing from any company in the US.
I mean, it's not really out of the ordinary for any company to kind of mislead, but I feel like this one is because Samsung went so far in trying to kind of mislead people about what this was doing in the first place, that this spills over into the zoom lens a lot more than it should. Like, you couldn't go out, and I apologize. I'm just going to spit out an example. I don't know if this proportion makes any sense at all, but like if you were in let's say a helicopter a mile over a beach, and you point this camera down, would you be able to like point it at someone who is reading a book on the beach and be able to make out what the book title is? And you know, change the proportions to whatever makes sense, like what would reasonably compare to the moon, or the distance to the moon and the size of the things that you're shooting. But I don't know if you'd be able to get that kind of detail. But the point is, you wouldn't be able to, because it's not trained to enhance a book title. It's trained to enhance a moon. And by enhance, we mean replace. So, you know, someone out there could very likely be getting the phone and expecting the zoom lens to produce those kinds of results. And they're definitely not going to get that. That's where I think this is problematic, because it has a very direct relationship on possibly getting somebody to buy this expecting the zoom lens to be really good, when in fact it's, you know, it just, okay.
I mean, I don't want to say you're wrong, but
you like saying that all the time.
I'm looking at the images that I took on my phone, like that are enhanced. And you know, at first glance it looks like, wow, that's a lot of detail. If you zoom in at all, you're gonna see color artifacts, blurring. Like, it's not just slapping on an 8 megapixel image of the moon into your 12 megapixel picture.
Yeah, and
like,
and we do know that it's not just a direct like cut and paste. That part has been confirmed through testing, and they're doing more some sort of like AI image generation effect to this, not just slapping on a basic image.
Yeah, the stuff it gets from the camera is like the baseline.
Which, if I remember correctly, I think Huawei was doing the actual like lazy, just clipping out a picture of the moon and sticking it on. Somebody was.
Weren't all these OnePlus and I think even Google? They had the night shot or whatever where it put in stars into the sky that weren't there.
That was OnePlus. Google has not been caught doing that, but I do have a theory that Google is doing something similar. Well, not similar, but I have a theory about Google. We can talk about that in a moment.
It's just, I don't think this is a unique issue. I don't think it's even particularly bad. Like, it's a good feature. The problem here is that Samsung didn't announce it, really. They could have announced this as a feature, a specific feature, and people would have been, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Just like the game optimizer, they could have said, oh, save your battery by turning this on. But they didn't for some reason.
Yeah, and
it seems like this is getting so much more attention than it deserves.
Oh no, I completely agree. This is getting, well, it's getting more attention than it deserves, but more fundamentally, it's getting attention for the wrong thing. Fine, who cares? They're faking some moonshots. That's what I've been saying this whole time is, cool. That's fine. It's weird that so many people are caught up in the fact that they're faking moonshots. Where, again, just to re-emphasize it, like the part I'm personally bothered by is the fact that by faking the moonshots and by really trying to focus on that as like one of their key features, they've also effectively been dishonest about the zoom lens. And that's my problem. It is false advertising for the zoom lens.
Yeah, it is a good zoom lens. Like, you're not going to get incredible detailed landscape photos, but it actually, it has helped like see a street sign so far away you can't quite read it. But you zoom in with the camera and it's just legible enough at like 50 times zoom that, okay, yeah, I can see what that is.
Yeah, and again, like well, not again, I didn't say this before, but yeah, I mean, the zoom lens is good. I'm not disputing that the zoom lens is actually a nice feature and they do it well. It's more that it is not going to capture anything close to this level of quality for anything else. It'll do it for the moon. It'll do it for, I think I heard a rumor that it does it for certain certain landmarks. So, like, if you go to Paris and shoot the Eiffel Tower, it might do this.
It's going to be a lot trickier with that, though.
I'm sure, yeah.
Because it's not just white on a black background.
Yeah, though the Eiffel Tower has been shot from literally every conceivable angle, so who knows?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how do you enhance the Eiffel Tower, but not anything else, but make that seem not look like a lazy Photoshop.
To be fair, I'm not sure many people would even notice or care. I mean, if you're looking at all this stuff on Facebook, you're already gonna see so much image degradation from Facebook that it might not really matter. All anyone's gonna look at is the Eiffel Tower and just kind of ignore the rest. But yeah, point remains. The thing is, this is still selling the notion that it's better than it is, which is the definition of false advertising. And, let's be honest, Samsung is one of those companies. We expect a little more credibility from them.
You do?
Well, they are now I think we expect that they are enough of an adult company that they shouldn't be doing the childish stuff like ZTE and Xiaomi would do. I mean, those companies we expect.
Manufacturers in the world.
Huh?
You mean the other biggest phone manufacturers in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, the companies that
Those are the
notoriously
childish ones?
the companies that notoriously use DSLRs and claim that they were using smartphones to shoot stuff. Yeah, I'm
I think
100%
Samsung's
calling
being
them
more
childish
grown up
companies.
about this.
Yeah. If we're getting into like things that my biggest pet peeve with Android OEMs is like this really started like a year or two ago, and it's kind of like faded into the background, which has been kind of surprising to me. Is using swap as a marketing gimmick, like swap memory.
Yeah.
Where all like Samsung does is they call it a RAM plus, where it's like, oh, we give you more RAM. No, that's how this has always worked.
Yeah.
Like, no, my phone doesn't have 64 gigs of RAM. Go away.
I do actually like that feature. It is actually somewhat helpful on Samsung's phones that inexplicably only have 4 gigs of RAM. Because 4 gigs of RAM isn't enough to really even hold 2 apps open anymore. But if you add an extra 3 or 4 gigs of swap space, it doesn't matter if it's a little bit slower, those apps are still in a suspended state, so they're quicker to get back to where you were because they're not just restarting completely.
Yeah, and properly managed swap space, let's be honest, you're not going to have so many writes that you're gonna fatigue your storage. So that's generally okay, because it's only going to swap, pretty infrequently, and that's fine. It's more of an issue.
I think modern storage is a lot more durable than we give it credit for.
That too.
I don't think in the life cycle of any phone, even if you keep it for 5 years, it's ever really going to be a problem. You might lose a gig.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. It's depending on how poorly managed it is.
Sale before the storage.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy enough to look back at like the old Nexus tablets, and those clearly had problems, but it wasn't because the storage was being overly used. It's because the storage controllers were garbage, and they somehow decayed in some bizarre way that I don't know that anyone ever really properly explained. But
in conclusion, this is stupid.
I like my detailed moon, even if it's fake. I like that I can pretend to have a nice moon shot without having to pull out a 2-foot-long telescope attachment for my $7,000 DSLR.
This gets in. The fake argument is very silly. It gets into like Ship of Theseus. It's like, all right, how fake does the image have to be before it's fake?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
And I think we have already gone over these kinds of discussions so many times. Obviously, again, it happened with portrait mode. Everyone was making a big deal about that. And honestly, I think the bigger issue with portrait mode was always, does it look good or is it really just a bad cutout? And like the early iPhone days of portrait mode were just abysmal. They looked terrible. So, yeah, sure, some purists out there got angry that there was fake blur, but nobody shooting that way really cared about fake blur. They cared that it was badly done blur.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gotten a lot better. Even Joe, famous Samsung hater, says that Samsung has like the best portrait mode he's used.
Okay. So there's.
Oh, you don't think so, Cody?
I haven't tried portrait mode on a Samsung phone, and I don't actually shoot a lot of portrait mode stuff anyway, so kind of not a factor. But we've seen these kinds of controversies before. HDR mode was another one of them. So many people got really mad because phones were shooting these very HDR-y images, and now they're still doing it. Like, HDR never went away. We're still shooting HDR images, but the processing has gotten much better, so now it doesn't look well, depending on who it is, it doesn't look nearly as bad as it used to. I mean, some companies are still processing with the weirdest choices, but a lot of them have gotten better. And we're gonna keep seeing
HDR
this.
like a basic feature of professional cameras.
No. Well, HDR is historically considered a processing approach when you're talking about most like regular cameras, like the prosumer dedicated cameras. Typically, you're talking about taking multiple exposures manually and then editing them together to get your so-called HDR image. But what I would sooner compare it to, well, that's a different discussion. But I mean, most cameras you can just automate the process of taking those multiple shots. Some cameras do have an automatic HDR mode. And it's up to you whether or not you want to use the automated or the more manual approaches. But yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say it's an automatic thing that everybody has. But I would even draw the comparisons of like just shooting in RAW versus shooting in JPEG. Obviously, you shoot in JPEG, you get whatever the camera kind of gives you. If you shoot in RAW, you're collecting a bunch of information on the sensor, and then you can use software to decide how much do I want to recover from the shadows? How much do I want to recover from the highlights, assuming they're not blown out completely? The argument there, and I get where people are coming from with this argument, is that's still information the sensor at least captured. It was real information. It's just how it's presented that is being determined. But let's be honest, the reality is smartphones are a couple years away from just using AI or other tricks to fix a lot of stuff. They're going to be faking almost everything. This is so even if people are arguing about this now, they're mostly arguing about it because it is just a cheap hack. In a few years, it's going to be good. So anyone who's mad about this now, they shouldn't be mad because stuff is getting faked. They got to get used to that. The faking is just going to keep getting worse. Except it's going to get better. And that's the whole thing. It's going to get better. And soon, no one should be angry about it. So, and by the way, that's why I don't care that this is faked. Like, fine, go ahead, fake it. Because I know in a couple years, it's just going to be way, way better fakes.
Yeah.
I know what I want out of a smartphone camera, and I don't think I'm really anywhere close to alone in this, is something convenient that takes pictures
Fake
where the
Mars.
end result looks attractive. It doesn't have to be accurate. I'm not here for perfect accuracy or perfect color balance or any of that. If I were, I would have a DSLR and a Lightroom subscription.
Okay, so sorry. Say it again, because I kind of got your and Corbin's audio mixed in my ears.
Oh, you mean like how audio works? I think it's a
Corbin
little,
started speaking and it sort of cut you out, from at least for my
wow,
hearing.
Corbin.
Sorry.
I think I'm agreeing with you that the point of a smartphone camera isn't to be accurate. It's to make an end result that looks pleasing.
Yeah.
And that almost always means shifting color balance, increasing saturation, using weird algorithms to blur together details so they don't look as grainy, and a whole bunch of other stuff, including maybe superimposing dynamically a moon over the moon. Like, if I wanted a perfectly accurate image, I would use a DSLR in RAW mode, in manual focus, manual exposure, manual white balance.
The funny thing is, I would almost argue that shooting in RAW with, what you're kind of going for is just, or what you're trying to say is basically the most generic default settings you can. I would argue that that is actually less realistic than shooting, I don't want to say in JPEG, just like, I don't want to pass it off that way, but a lot of times shooting in RAW, you're actually capturing more than, let's say, the human eye can even see. So there is an extent to which that would actually be less honest, less accurate. But it's funny because what you're saying...
How the turntables.
What you're saying is actually a classic complaint that photographers have had about Sony cameras versus Canon cameras. A lot of old school photographers love to talk about how great the colors are on Canon cameras. In truth, the only difference is Canon cameras, for the most part, are a little bit softer in the focus. Like, they just truly cannot even get as sharp. Their sensors aren't capable of it. At least older sensors. We're not talking about current day. We're talking about like 5 years ago to 15 years ago. That period. But the bigger issue is their colors were, like, everyone talks about their color science. The reality is, for the most part, Canon colors were just warmer than Sony's. All you had to do was sit down in Lightroom and tinker with your color temperature a little bit, and there were a couple of other very minor tweaks that you wanted to do to specific colors, and you could turn a Sony image into a Canon image, almost, like, basically to the point you cannot discern the difference. And but that's one of the things people have for years bitched about Sony not looking nice enough and looking too scientific and looking cold and lifeless. Well, yeah, all you had to do, like, Sony was capturing the more realistic image, and all you had to do was sit down with Lightroom for a minute and you can fix that. But yeah, what you're describing is you want a phone that's giving you the prettier picture, and that's something that Apple was very well praised for a while in comparison to other Android devices, because Apple was warming up all the images. People were comparing this pretty directly. They were just shooting photos with an iPhone, shooting photos with Samsung and Pixel phones, and lo and behold, yeah, most of them you could pretty much just fix by warming them up. I say fix, but you can make them look like iPhone pictures by just raising the heat a little, or the color temperature a little bit.
That's lowering the heat. Weirdly, I think iPhone photos now look kind of dull in comparison to ones I get from like a Pixel or a Samsung.
No, they actually do. This I think is why Apple keeps losing like all those blind comparisons in KBHD does, because their photos they don't look as good. Whatever Apple's been trying to do with the camera, it isn't working.
I'm still gonna buy the Type C iPhone.
Yeah, we've lost Corbin to Apple.
I'm sorry.
The gateway drug was, what was it? It was the iPad or the MacBook?
I feel like it was the MacBook.
Yeah, the gateway was Windows not having a good mail app and like 3 other apps I kind of wanted, and it all escalated from there. That's the stupidest reason, honestly.
Windows didn't make good enough fake moon pictures.
Yeah,
that's
terrible.
That's exactly it.
Only does fake Mars photos.
You just pointed at an empty spot of the sky and it plops a picture of Mars there bigger than the moon.
Yeah. I mean, eventually they'll just make the camera app Stellarium, and you point it up and it'll your picture will be all the constellations with the labels on them.
I mean, that wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah. I think what will happen is the next Pixel will have AI camera which means that instead of going somewhere and taking a picture,
You just
you can
ask anyone.
ask the
Yeah.
pixel to take a picture of this thing, and it'll make it for you.
They
And then
should
you can-
literally name it the Instagram filter.
Yeah.
I mean, so many Instagrammers are known for going places with fake props just so they can shoot themselves on top of Everest, or to like the cutout plane where they just go hop
And
in a
then-
first class seat on the ground and that's it.
Yeah. And then also Samsung will do that, but they will put several fake moons in each photo generated.
Somehow involved Bixby.
Bixby, put me on indoor.
Yeah.
Did indoor have multiple
Buying you
moons?
a
I
new
don't-
door.
Indoor is a moon.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I don't know if
Tatooine had two suns. There was some place
Yeah.
in Star Wars that had a very
I'm sure
notable
I'm
dynasty.
sure there's several.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, I'm glad talked about that for far longer than it deserved.
Oh, you're just mad because I don't know why.
I am.
You're
mad.
just
I was
mad.
mad.
Because
Right?
it's stupid.
I was mad. Yeah. I was upset writing about that.
I think honestly, what's the most stupid part to me is that it took 3 years for it to blow up.
Yes.
Like I noticed this on the Note 20
I
Ultra.
mean-
It's like, oh, cool! It enhances the moon.
It's-
I had forgotten this was a feature, but when I first heard about it, I remember thinking, "Oh yeah, this is going to get debunked like immediately." And when I
Well-
saw some early sample photos, I remember thinking, "Okay, yeah, that's clearly faked. It has to be." And I forgot about it after that because who cares?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it already blew up a couple times.
Yeah.
Like, there was a huge Input Mag article, either last year or the year before, that like went into detail about this and got some not great answers from Samsung, as you talked about, but some answers.
Okay, yeah,
So-
sorry. You're right. It was Input Mag. I thought it was Engadget or somebody else, but yeah, it was Input Mag. That's who it was.
Some journalist you are.
Yeah, so there.
Oh, like
yes,
I give
like-
a crap about Input Mag.
I think just everyone forgot, and they need something to be mad at, because life's not fair right now. And if anytime you have the chance to wag the finger at a multinational corporation and you take it, I'm fine with that. I just think it's silly in this one case.
Maybe
But
mad at Oppo for sending out review units that are a specific variant that can't get OTAs.
no, because you're the only person who ever got review phones from Oppo.
I think Adam got a
I was
couple
gonna say
where he
you
had
and
to send
Adam.
them back. Adam got the
is Adam-
flagships. I got the mid-ranges.
Is Adam fake? Do we know?
Okay,
is
all
he-
unreal.
show me somebody who can confirm that a ginger is real. I mean,
Yeah.
we know better.
Yeah, so I think I don't have anything else to talk about, and I'm about to put pizza in my oven to reheat, so I'll probably pop out.
Right. I don't know if I have anything either.
Let's see. Well, what else was? Who was it? Was it Austin? I think also popped in the Google Glass Enterprise Edition is officially gone. I haven't read this yet, but
Wait, it wasn't dead yet?
apparently
Even
not.
Enterprise? I thought that had died in like 2019.
I have a feeling that this is more of a okay, they're no longer selling the headset and will stop supporting it in September, which tells me that they probably had, if they stopped selling it just recently, that's actually kind of weird that they would plan to stop supporting it in September if they only just now stopped selling it. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they tried killing it off earlier. Okay, according to The Verge, the Enterprise Edition 2 was announced in 2019. So, yeah, they've been selling it for a little while.
Apparently, the final release of Glass OS was 2017. What are they not supporting anymore?
Google Play Services.
Yeah. Which
Turns
actually
out it's based on like gingerbread, and they're pulling the plug for that.
Well, and Glass, everything on Enterprise Edition, or from what I remember hearing, it's all basically custom anyway. Like, companies effectively had to ask Google to make the software for their specific use cases. So, I don't know. I kind of feel like this is a weird direction for them to kind of go, I guess, because I imagine they were probably making good money on this while they were selling it. The one counterpoint is this is possibly something that they want to kill now in preparation for their own new AR or VR glass project, whatever the hell that was called, and whenever the hell that's actually going to happen. Which, does anyone here think that's even coming in the next 2 years? I know that they were aiming for it to be, I think, next year, but truthfully, I just don't see it happening.
I know they were doing anything. Or planning to do anything.
I imagine they have to do something because Apple's about to do something.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a rebooted project. I don't know when it would show up. I don't know. Again, this is exactly like the dedicated VR stuff, where like they had such a lead years ago and they just tossed it aside, and now someone else is gonna take that market, and it annoys me because it keeps happening and they don't learn. So I'm sure it'll come. But my oven's done, so I'm gonna go now.
All right. So Corbin's taking off. Zach, if you want to stay, you're welcome to. Let's see.
Bye.
Later,
Bye.
Corbin.
Goodbye.
Get out of here.
Let's see. But yeah, I know that they were expecting to do some kind of a product. It's been rumored a few times. I don't remember any of the details on it. I have a feeling Austin remembers more about that, or has more to link to, but they were definitely working on something like that. It's known inside the company that they are. How far this is going to go and when it's going to happen, who knows? And honestly, some part of me kind of thinks that maybe, you know, it probably goes without saying, but maybe Google shouldn't be the one trying to do this. It seems like they have a pretty bad track record for releasing products that are like industry groundbreaking kinds of things, and this isn't even industry groundbreaking anymore, but it's the sort of thing that they need to do more to make it work. Austin says there are prototypes in the wild. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. The fact that they're doing this, in a way, like, I do kind of want to see Glass itself go away, because Glass, despite the fact that people always refer to it as an AR headset, it's never been AR. Nothing about Glass was ever an AR headset. It's a heads-up display. That's it.
HUD-set.
What's that?
HUD-set.
Yes, a HUD-set. So, you know, the thing is, there's always been something more people wanted. And so retiring Glass makes a lot of sense. And honestly, whatever they come out with, I hope they do not call it Glass. Please, I am begging the tech gods, do not call this thing Glass. That is the worst product name. I get it. It made some sense, but holy, please do not call this Glass. I hate saying that.
Plastic.
Okay, yeah, so Austin did link to the AR glasses that they were at least kind of showing off. And yeah, they look like basic, normal glasses, at least from what it seems to be showing here. Though I have a feeling these are nowhere near complete, even as prototypes. I don't know. Kind of hard to tell from the lenses. I guess maybe they show kind of a holographic image. Hard to, without being able to see light projecting into them, it's hard to tell. But yeah, anyway, I just have my doubts that this is going to be a good product unless they spend a lot more time on it. Google just doesn't seem to be having a good reputation or a good history for launching products like this. Oh, how did I miss these other topics? Okay, so I had 3 other topics sitting here, and I don't know how much there is to say on any of them, but do you have any interest in talking about the Silicon Valley Bank stuff?
Sure. It's pretty.
I mean, if
kind of funny. I don't
none of us
understand how people think crypto is still gonna work.
I like that you're specifically calling out crypto with this. Which, yes, crypto did play a big part in this, but it's not the only reason that this happened, to be fair.
Yeah, it's also because they were allowed to ignore banking regulations.
Yep. Regulations that were repealed just a few years ago during the previous guy. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to try to summarize this because honestly there is actually a lot of detail to how this all happened. But fundamentally, it basically came out to Silicon Valley Bank had a ton of money in, I forget what type of fund it is, but they basically had bought a bunch of investment, and then when the interest rate kept changing, it kept making their investments worse and worse, to the point that they, for whatever reason, needed to basically sell off a ton of them at a loss. As a side effect of this, when a bunch of companies started pulling money out, it created what's known as a bank run, and Silicon Valley Bank literally just did not have the money immediately available to start actually honing it up. Which very quickly led into kind of a catastrophe situation. The FDIC stepped in, and now the bank is effectively dead. People will be allowed to get their money out. They are selling off assets, and presumably this is going to work out for everyone who had money in the bank as like deposits. And it's going to work out so that taxpayers don't have to cover this bill, supposedly. Whether or not either of these is entirely true, we'll see, but yeah, we'll see. And then the issue for investors, they're screwed. Investors are basically going to lose their investment. Sorry, tough luck.
Investors are the issue.
Well, here's the catch to this. In regular investors, like the people, stock traders, look, they put money into a thing, there's a risk associated with that sucks, and they lost it. It happens. It's not supposed to happen often, but it does happen. The one place where I do see this being a bit of a problem is there are things like retirement funds that do have money invested into SVB and a couple of the others. And so regular normal people who had what were supposed to be pretty stable investments for like retirement funds, they did lose out. And And that does suck. Like, something sort of similar happened to my mom many years ago when Washington Mutual crashed. And so she lost a lot of her retirement fund because of this. That's, that part of it does become a problem. Unfortunately, those people are SOL. Because again, investing is a risk.
Were they investing directly or through some retirement fund corporation manager?
In that particular case, I believe it was the latter, but I don't know specifically, or rather, I don't remember. I think I used to know.
I feel like if it's the manager, the management company choosing the investments, they should be the ones liable.
I mean, usually part of the deal is they're choosing what they consider to be low risk, and they don't necessarily know that a low risk is going to become a high risk at a relative moment's notice. In theory, if they're smart, they'd pull their money quickly, but they probably did not get word that Silicon Valley Bank was literally in the span of, I think it was 3 days. Like, this all happened in like 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure a lot of investment companies didn't really know that this was going to be a problem. And unless you're paying very, very close attention to how Silicon Valley Bank is making its money and what they're doing, you just might not know about this kind of a thing. And then you turn out to be the last one to find out. Because after all, keep in mind, a big part of what caused this was very literally other companies decided to pull their money. The ones that just had deposited large sums of money, they decided to start pulling it. And in the process, they basically created the problem.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
I'm just thinking,
hard to blame them.
If you're the one investing, you should be the one liable, just like with a bank. If you're handling other people's money, you should be the one who's liable for anything that goes wrong, just like banks are.
I mean,
I don't know if that's legally what happens.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's more like the agreement that usually exists with something like that is you're agreeing to let somebody invest money for you, and their legal responsibility is to not steal from you. Like, they are doing the part of trying to research good investments, which, okay, yes, they failed, but they're not accountable for an investment going bad. They're accountable to not steal from you. It would be kind of like, what would be a good example of this? It's funny because I'm about to use the worst example, but it's also the one that it's kind of the most accurate. It's kind of like when you ship something via FedEx, UPS, or USPS. Technically, all they're doing is promising that they're going to try to deliver your package. They do not actually guarantee that they're going to deliver it or what condition it will be in when it gets delivered. All they're going to do is promise to try. And yes, that's kind of terrible, because as we all have had some bad experience with one of these companies just absolutely blundering it in some spectacular way, either losing your package or damaging it beyond possible acceptable levels. But they don't generally take responsibility for this. They sell you insurance to buy that responsibility. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing in a weird way, except investment companies don't sell you insurance on bad investments.
Yeah, I was gonna say that there is the fallback with shipping, where you can pay an extra X% to be sure you get your money back. on the value of whatever you shipped if it gets lost.
Well, usually a portion of that value. Weirdly, they often won't even cover the full value, which is these companies.
USPS does.
They might. I think FedEx is the one where they only pay up to a certain amount or something like that.
This is why you should ship. Well, that's like the FDIC.
Yeah.
But this is why you should ship with USPS. Because it's cheap. There's insurance that covers everything.
In general, you should just never use FedEx. Never using FedEx is 100% the best choice.
I used USPS to ship something to Germany a bunch of years ago, and it was like $30. I shipped a Note 4. So, not a big thing, but took out the battery, put it in a box, $30 straight to Germany. And FedEx and UPS wanted like $100 for the same service.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is a bit of a niche situation, especially because you probably were falling into that same like special the same special rates thing that a lot of Chinese shippers were using, where they were getting not technically free, but it was borderline free shipping for their random or crap that they were sending from China to the US and using Amazon usually as like their reseller. So basically it was tax supported low cost shipping, which is
USPS get tax funds? I mean, not anymore, certainly.
Well, but yeah, they do. I mean, they are a government organization fundamentally. They are basically...
But aren't they separated and generally operate as a private entity, which really
they collect
them
money,
up?
But I believe the way it works is they are guaranteed to get money to operate, because they're notoriously a loser of money. They're not operating on a profit or breaking even. They're losing money. But they stay operating because the government keeps it operating.
The USPS has no direct taxpayer funds.
Direct.
Whatever the hell.
It's coming from somewhere.
The USPS OIG says it's generally self-funded. That means no tax dollars are used to keep the lights on at its many facilities across the country.
Well, it's coming from somewhere, because I mean, this has been a hot topic for a number of years, that the USPS is just hemorrhaging money. So
they shouldn't be operating at a profit. They're a government service. They should be funded with tax money.
Yeah, and I'm sure they are somehow. I don't know the specifics of how. I'm sure somebody else will either look it up or knows, but yeah, they're getting money from somewhere else, because again, like I said, it's been a hot topic for a long time that they are hemorrhaging money. And unless they had a massive reserve of money somewhere, then I'm pretty sure hemorrhaging money usually means you can't afford to keep the lights on by yourself.
Yeah. I don't know. The USPS is like getting the worst of both worlds. With it has to operate like a business, but it can't make profit.
Well, worst of three worlds. Don't forget, DeJoy's in charge now. So, yeah. I mean, every world is bad to them. there is no good world for them. Their world is bad.
Still doing well though, service-wise, except in Miami. For some reason.
Come to the West Coast. There's, well, especially Washington. For whatever reason, the state of Washington apparently just has endless problems with USPS. I don't know why. But yeah, Miami. What was the issue in Miami again? I remember hearing about something. But I don't remember what it was.
Well, every time someone sends something to Arrow, they send it through a forwarder because it's a lot cheaper than DHL or something.
And every forwarder is in Florida.
Is in Miami. And for whatever reason, USPS is just horrible at marking packages as delivered. Like, they'll either mark them as delivered before they even leave the post office, so you have no idea if they actually got there, or they just never mark them as delivered. I think when Errol bought his S22 Ultra, he sent it to my house first, so then I could forward it to the forwarder and include like a credit card in it or something that he also got. And I think it's still not marked as delivered. Like if I open a tracking app, it's like, here's an outgoing package from 5 months ago.
Yeah, if I ever look at USPS or FedEx, I think it's FedEx, but maybe it's USPS. Or sorry, UPS. There are like 2 or 3 shipments that I think are still in that weird pending column, because one of them was something that was definitely sent. It was definitely received. I know it was received. But for whatever reason, it just never got marked. And then 2 of the others were labels that were created and will just never fall off their system. Love how that works.
I think I also have a bunch of pending shipments that are things that were canceled, or like they printed a label and then decided, actually, we're going to send it with this other carrier instead.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. I don't think I have any sitting on my account like that anymore. Either that or maybe I manually hit them. I don't know. But yeah, anyway. Shippers suck. But yeah, investments likewise also kind of suck. That this is... sorry, as I unwind us back to the original topic. But yeah, so one of the things I find kind of weird and screwy after this whole Silicon Valley Bank thing, and a couple of other banks are like on the verge of crashing, including Signature Bank, which effectively kind of got preemptively crashed, and then like 2 others that are just like barely riding the line where their stock is absurdly low. The weird take that I've seen is a bunch of people who are saying, hey, look, this is how bad things are in big tech right now. All these companies are crashing, and the implication is that it's because the companies are doing something wrong, not the banks, but the companies themselves. And it's like, no, this is a banking thing. I don't understand how people... Well, I do understand. It's because people are stupid on social media. But it's hard to grasp how people have decided to twist the narrative that deeply, that they're convincing themselves that tech companies are the problem in this situation because a bunch of them used a bank that just so happens to have done something crappy behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's great that there's another recession, possibly even a depression coming up.
Yeah, and believe me, I'm not digging that possibility at all, because it looks like every time it looks like things could normalize, we get one step closer as some really bad thing happens. I mean, all through 2022, we were kind of expecting, we saw some bad stuff happen. It definitely was a recession. It definitely was not good for our economy. But I think coming out of 2022, a lot of people sort of expected, all right, as long as things just sort of stay stable from here, we're okay. It doesn't have to get much worse than this. And then January comes and it's like, hey, everybody's laying off like thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people. And then February, that trend continued. Now in March, the banks that happen to be connected to a bunch of companies, several of them are either in dire straits or crashing. Each one of these things is just nose diving the economy one more step. And yeah, I don't love that image. That puts us in a really precarious place and likely just pushes the economy further into that like unrecoverable situation.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could get some regulation anywhere.
Shocking idea. Absolutely unbelievable.
I mean, it's not only a problem in financial sectors and business, it's everywhere in the US where ISPs can do whatever the hell they want. Cell phone companies can do whatever they want, basically. Anyone making food or supplements can do whatever they want. Yeah, this is this, sure. We just have to say it is, and no one will care.
Yep. And, don't get me wrong, I can see where certain things, honestly, like the proponents of deregulation, it's funny because a lot of times they can actually point to some pretty credible examples of some regulation that actually doesn't make sense. There are some weird regulations out there that any rational person can look at and say, oh, well, no, that one's obviously a bad one. It's kind of like when people talk about unions and say that one of the big problems with unions is that they protect the lazy workers. They protect the people who don't want to do their jobs. Well, yeah. I mean, I personally can think of a few examples. I'm one of the people who thinks of like various people that they've known in history, and it's like, yeah, that is a person who is taking advantage of working in a union that protects them from losing their job. Those are people who are the perfect poster children for why some people hate unions. The problem is, unions are also really freaking good at protecting people from really, really terrible stuff. And the same is true with regulation. Like, you can always pick out the good examples of bad regulations. The problem is, there are so many regulations we can't skip. We gotta have them.
Yeah, it's the perfection fallacy. If it's not perfect, don't do it at all.
Perfect is the enemy of good. Good old classic line. Austin, communist RambleCast.
No, socialist.
Yeah, exactly. This is socialism. Oh, well, there goes my political career. But yeah. So, I don't know. I honestly am curious if this is going to have some weird ramifications on tech, though. Because there were reportedly a lot of startups that basically had all their money tied up in SVB. You gotta figure at least a few of them probably have employees who just freaked out and probably went job hunting like right away, just looking for any company that might be able to pay the check next month. I imagine that there's probably some amount of companies that are going to be jumping through hoops to wiggle their money around in different ways, which could have all kinds of different, or it could play out in different forms. And I'm kind of curious if some of this will possibly even affect like product timelines, or who knows, like even the things that companies choose to invest in. You know, like maybe companies will be a little more cautious about acquisitions, or vice versa. Like they might look at this and say, well, we don't want to acquire a bunch of companies right now, because who knows what happens if the place where our money is sitting next month suddenly falls out from under us. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but I could see some weird side effects.
Yeah, I have to go.
Okay. All I had left was Pixel 8 Pro rumors and Pixel Fold, and I can't see either of those being too exciting. Did you say something?
No.
Oh.
I mean, I'm excited for the 8 Pro to have a flat screen.
Yes.
Let's get over this curved screen fad.
Yes. Oh my god. I am so tired of curved screens. I was literally just last night, I spent a little bit of time playing a game on my phone, and the curved screen kept like just barely sensing a touch here and there, and it's like, no, please. I've got a case on it to try to prevent this, and even the case allows like the smallest amount of touching to happen. I just want a case that gets to go all the way around the damn screen again.
Yeah, and a screen protector that isn't $70 and impossible to apply.
Yes. Well, okay, I don't like putting screen protectors on anymore. I haven't had any problems with scratching or cracked screens. But yeah, I mean, screen protectors for people who want them, like it you gotta have them. It's just fair. It's dumb to make this a thing people can't have.
Yeah. All right. I am going.
All right, man. Well, good having you on, and I will chat with you sometime soon.
All right.
All right. Later.
Bye.
Okay. Let's see. So, the Pixel 8 Pro, I just pulled up a quick one. I know that there were more articles and a few more details that hit about the Pixel 8 Pro, particularly that the original renders, the person who did them apparently transposed the screen sizes of the two, and while they probably got the aspect ratio right, they somehow goofed on the screen sizes, and in doing so has somehow managed to really piss off the small phone crowd. I saw you guys talking about that in Discord, and all I know how to say is yes, I completely agree. The small phone crowd can never ever be happy with anything, ever, and they never will be. That being said, I mean, to some small extent, I do get it. Like, I respect that. It's a group of people that at least to their perspective, they think that they are a large group of people, and they're looking at all these companies and screaming to high heavens that they just want a small phone, and companies will not make this for them. The few companies that have tried making this for them have only ever done like 1 or 2 generations, and then they cancel them. Obviously, most of us know part of the reason for this is that companies don't want to make some of the sacrifices that come with a small phone. Very famously, the smaller the phone, the shorter the battery life, assuming you keep the same thickness. If you don't keep the same thickness, if you're willing to go thicker, you can have the battery life, but it's, you know, part of the trade-off is, or part of the factor out of this is, most companies don't want to make thicker phones. And we could talk all day and all night about the reasons for that. I don't care to, but yeah, the thicker the phone, the longer the battery life, but no one wants to do it. Smaller phones also have obviously the fact that they are less visible, less distinct, and as a result, they're harder to spot in public. And being spotted in public is part of how phones kind of build their brand. I mean, let's be honest. Everybody recognizes an iPhone. Everyone can anyone who sees any Android phone out in public, unless you can see the back of it, you probably just assume it's a Samsung phone. Oh, sorry. That stretch kind of came out of nowhere, and it was needed. But you know, anyway, so I get it. Small phone crowd wants small phone. Companies aren't making it for them. So I kind of get where they're coming from on being agitated. The catch, the obvious catch, the huge, profound, ridiculous catch is every time there is a small phone, and yes, there are usually reasons it doesn't do well, but every time there's a small phone, it kind of fails to make money. Apple only really seems to be making it work with the SE because the SE is so cheap, and you can tell they're trying to keep around a phone that has a home button. What the? Okay, PayPal, thanks. Super useful. Anyway. But yeah, so I don't know. Was there anything else about the 8? Obviously, there were rumors about the camera, which presumably would have some kind of a progressive shooting feature where it can take multiple exposures simultaneously on the same sensor, which sounds pretty cool. I want to see it in action, but yeah, sounds cool. Let's see. Was there anything else in this? Oh yeah, and the cutout reveals that there is some kind of extra hole. That is going to appear in the Pro. So this thing, whatever it is that would appear underneath the flash, the rumors suggest depth sensor or maybe a macro kind of sensor. I doubt it's going to be that, but presumably depth sensor, which, okay, I kind of buy that. It makes sense. And oh yeah, and David said, give me a thick phone. Austin, one of the top comments on the Reddit posts is the 8 is 0.1 millimeter thicker than the 8 Pro. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to bump that. I love that they're inferring from photos that is it from photos or was this specific dimensions? I don't remember. Anyway, I love that it's a big deal that it is 0.1 millimeter. That is such a tiny measurement. That is so small. CAD file. Okay. So these are presumably very real. But hey, okay, so it's imperceptibly thicker. Chances are that was, I'm guessing, a cost-cutting measure. I would almost bet anything it's just so that they can save some money on on the packaging. And by packaging, I mean like how different components are fit in there, and maybe the battery that they're using or something like that. Somewhere in there, they had to make space for just a little bit more, or the cheaper component costs a little bit more, and it just turned out that they needed to make it a little thicker to make that work. Please, for the love of God, make the back glass matte. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I'll go with that one. I'm not gonna fight that. That's pretty fair. And then I think to round this out, we'll quickly hit the fold. I probably should have done this one before Corbin took off, but the recent rumor is that the fold is coming out in June. I don't think there was a specific date, but yeah, the rumor has it that the Pixel Fold, Google's first folding phone, is going to be out in June. So basically, announcement at I/O, release, probably a week or 2 weeks later, which would be pretty normal for Google's product release schedule. And let's see. The expectation is 256 gigabyte base storage, which, okay, that seems fine. It's not great or anything, but it also doesn't seem bad. Let's see. European carrier website listed June 6th and changed to 13th. It's possible maybe that was a placeholder. I don't know. We'll see. Sorry, I'm hitting that sleep deprivation point. But yeah, and you'll be able to get it in black and dark gray or white. I'm just a hard no on the colors. I want something a little more interesting and different. These do not scream interesting or different to me. Yeah, it seems like that's about the only really notable points here. I am curious how they're going to somehow keep the price way down, because that's the only way this phone is going to do any kind of numbers. Yeah, so basically almost no chance that it's going to move high volume. Even once it comes out. Yeah, I don't know. I'm part of what bothers me about this, and it's the same thing we've talked about in Discord several times. It's going to be a year-old chip, or older, technically. It's an old chip. They're not going to have a good price point for this. So it's going to be expensive, possibly, or at least moderately so. And they're going to have wow, my brain is just totally slipping. Price was listed at 1,700 pounds. Is that pounds? Yeah, no, it's gonna. There's no way this works. This is a loser. I'm still kind of holding to the belief. You called it though. It's going to be show. Yeah. I mean, I think what their purpose here is they want to put out They want to put this thing out so that it's on the market, so they can say that they put it out. Shonen.io. Yeah. See, I'm still holding to the belief that maybe it won't be this year, but at least somewhere in the future, they're going to migrate the Pixel Fold to come out at the same time as the regular Pixel phones. I obviously could be wrong on that, but I feel like it makes more sense for them to release it at the same time and with the same hardware set. So right now, yes, they're using an older chip, they're using older components. It has a lot of sacrifices, or seems like it will. My hunch is that once they have this under control and they're used to building a folding phone, I think they're going to migrate it so that it launches at the same time as the mainstream Pixel phones. The A series, different story. The one possible exception to that is if the A series does end up getting killed off, I could kind of see them releasing the Pixel Fold as a replacement, as a timing replacement. It would just kind of take over getting the announcements at the time that the A series Pixels do. Oh, anyway, I feel like this is gonna turn out to be a flop. It's not gonna do well, and outside of enthusiasts, I don't think anyone's gonna be buying this. Wonder how that does with sales having two different launches. It seems to work for Samsung, right? Yeah, those Samsung releases to a larger part of the world, they release more phones. Not that they can't basically match the same tempo that not to say Google can't match that kind of tempo, but or that Samsung couldn't do it if they wanted. Like, they obviously could just roll their devices up into fewer launches, but I think they have enough of them and a different enough sales pitch for each that it kind of makes sense to do sort of whatever they want. Austin says, yeah, or just give it a newer chip first so it will be a small volume device. Yeah, that would work too. I don't know. I think we're gonna find out. Just so many weird things with this one. Okay, so my mind is wandering too much. I can feel it just going into its want to crash mode. So I think this is probably just a really good time to stop here. Let's see. So the Last of Us streams did end last night. Thanks to those who came by and checked those out. And of course, thank you all for coming by and checking out this stream today. Hope you enjoyed and got a few laughs, or maybe learned something. Who knows? We like to educate here. Let's see. This weekend, I will likely be playing some Last of Us. I don't know for sure what days, but I think it's probably going to be Saturday, Sunday. We will have to see a little bit because there may be some timing issues. Let's see. But yeah, it'll probably be Fall Guys. I don't really have anything else planned at the moment. If anyone has suggestions, drop them into the Game Streams channel. Maybe I'll check those out. Let's see. Also, as usual, if anyone would like to support the channel, there are links down below to Streamlabs, Cash App, and Patreon. It is definitely appreciated. It helps out. And to those who support the channel already, thank you so much. You are awesome people. it is definitely a deeply appreciated thing. Let's see. But with that, I believe that about covers all the commentary, all the announcements, all of whatever. So thank you all for coming by. Thank you for hanging out, and thank you for being part of the conversation. I hope you have an excellent rest of the week, and I will be seeing you all in Discord and the weekend streams. With that, good night, everybody.